And thanks to you at home for joining us this hour. Happy Friday. This weekend will mark 2 years since the inauguration of this most unusual presidency. And it turns out, if you want to think of this as kind of a week-long celebration that we've been having leading up to that 2-year anniversary, it has been a pretty intense week. I mean, think about what has happened over the past week. The New York Times reported a week ago that the FBI opened an inquiry into whether or not the president was secretly working on behalf of Russia while he was president of the United States. Soon thereafter, CNN published excerpts from the closed-door congressional interview of the FBI general counsel, the interview that had apparently been part of the predicate for that New York Times article. And what CNN published was just as hair-raising. FBI General Counsel James Baker telling the congressional committee, quote, "If the president of the United States fired James Comey at the behest of the Russian government, that would be unlawful and unconstitutional." A Republican congressman then responded to Baker and said, quote, "Is that what happened here?" And Baker responded, quote, "I don't know." Then an FBI lawyer, quote, cut off additional questions on that line of inquiry. If the president of the United States fired Jim Comey at the behest of the Russian government? I don't know. Maybe that's what happened. Then the Washington Post reported that President Trump confiscated notes from his translator and refused to allow any U.S. official to know what was discussed in any of his in-person meetings with Vladimir Putin. Then the New York Times reported that after the first one of those meetings, the one from which he apparently took his translator's notes, the president got on Air Force One to fly home after that meeting. And from Air Force One, he called a reporter at the New York Times, who we now know is David Sanger, called David Sanger to make the case to him, I guess potentially on behalf of the Russian government. We don't know, but he made this case to the New York Times reporter that Russia had been falsely accused of interfering in the 2016 election. Russia was not falsely accused of that. Why was he telling that to a New York Times reporter? Then, as we were absorbing that new information, the New York Times further reported that Trump repeatedly insisted over the past year that the United States should destroy NATO. The United States should pull out of NATO, which, of course, is the apex of all of Russia's greatest wishes and desires. Again, this is all this week. I mean, this week, the president's longtime personal lawyer, Michael Cohen, also expressed fears for his own safety and for the safety of his family if he goes ahead with his previously announced plans to testify before Congress on February 7th. Cohen's relationship with the president and him becoming a cooperating witness for multiple sets of prosecutors has already resulted in federal prosecutors in New York designating the president as Individual One for having allegedly directed Michael Cohen to commit campaign finance felonies. Now, this week, the Wall Street Journal reported that Cohen was paid by Trump during the campaign to finance an operation in which Cohen attempted to rig online polls in Trump's favor. Cohen was reportedly paid $50,000 by Trump for that operation. Cohen then turned around and paid his contractor who was working on that operation $12,000 to $13,000 in cash in a Walmart bag, which also included a used boxing glove. Okay. Vanity Fair reported here on our air last night. Reporter Emily Jane Fox reported here last night that Michael Cohen has documentation that Trump directed that operation, that campaign expenditure, just like he did the other campaign finance shenanigans that have now been charged by the Southern District of New York as felonies. And then, again, this is all the same week. This is how we are leading up to the 2-year anniversary of Trump being sworn in, all this same week. Now, BuzzFeed News has been the source of an all-day furor today with their just volcanically explosive reporting that President Trump personally instructed Michael Cohen to lie to Congress about the Trump Tower Moscow project, about how long negotiations went on and how involved Trump and his family were. Remember, Michael Cohen has pled guilty to lying to Congress about that. The BuzzFeed reporting is that Trump directed Cohen to make those false statements. BuzzFeed reports that, quote, the special counsel's office learned about Trump's directive for Cohen to lie to Congress through interviews with multiple witnesses from the Trump Organization, and internal company emails, text messages, and a cache of other documents. And BuzzFeed further reports that Cohen then confirmed this to Mueller's team. Again, that the president directed him to lie to Congress to cover up at least some aspect of the Trump Tower Moscow project. That's what the week has been like. Now, tonight, just as we were getting on the air, after a day in which multiple members of Congress described the BuzzFeed report as, if true, the most serious allegations against Trump yet. If true, definitely the grounds for impeachment. If true, an inflection point in the entire scandal surrounding this presidency from the outset. That if true caveat tonight itself blew up when the special counsel's office made this exceedingly rare public statement in response to the BuzzFeed reporting. Quote, BuzzFeed's description of BuzzFeed's description of specific statements to the special counsel's office and characterization of documents and testimony obtained by this office regarding Michael Cohen's congressional testimony are not accurate. That is from Peter Carr, the spokesman for the special counsel's office. Now, I have on the air previously expressed envy and jealousy for Peter Carr, because that seems like a great job. If you're the spokesman for the special counsel's office, your job is to never say anything, right? The special counsel's office almost never makes public comments. I mean, we did a little survey of this tonight, at least as quickly as we could. We could only come up with 3 previous instances in the entirety of the Mueller investigation in which Peter Carr has spoken on the record to a reporter about what's going on in the investigation. The first one was April of last year. McClatchy had published a story saying that the Mueller team had evidence that Michael Cohen had in fact traveled to Prague, which would appear to buttress an allegation in the Christopher Steele dossier that Cohen had gone to Prague to meet with Russians about the election interference campaign. Cohen has denied that that happened, but McClatchy published this piece in April saying that Mueller had evidence that it did happen. After that report, we got a very, at that point, I think, unprecedented statement from the spokesman for the special counsel, not directly disputing the McClatchy story, but giving a sort of general warning to the press that there had been lots of inaccuracies out there, and every journalist should be very careful about their sourcing. Quote, many stories about our investigation have been inaccurate. Be very cautious about any source that claims to have knowledge about our investigation and dig deep into what they claim before reporting on it. So that was last April from the special counsel's office. Then 6 months later, in October, after some strange reporting that somebody was maybe trying to shop false sexual harassment allegations about Robert Mueller to the press, the special counsel's office put out a statement saying that they had referred the matter to the FBI. Finally, last month, reporter Michael Isikoff at Yahoo News got the special counsel's office to confirm that a key filing from the special counsel in the Paul Manafort case would be public. There had been a lot of speculation as to whether it would be sealed or whether it would be public-facing. That was a very minor comment from the special counsel, but it was super helpful for all of us planning to cover that development in the Paul Manafort case. But we think that's kind of it. We think that's the universe of the number of times the special counsel's office has made an on-the-record comment to a reporter. But now tonight, they have really put out a big one. They have said this, pushing back on BuzzFeed's big scoop today. Now, I should say that the BuzzFeed editor-in-chief is going to be here tonight to respond to this. But this is what we got from the special counsel's office from Peter Carr. Quote, BuzzFeed's description of specific statements to the special counsel's office and characterization of documents and testimony obtained by this office regarding Michael Cohen's congressional testimony are not accurate. That's what we got from the special counsel's office. We are going to hear from BuzzFeed's editor-in-chief tonight, who has put out his own statement. Quote, we stand by our reporting and the sources who informed it, and we urge the special counsel to make clear what he's disputing. But that's where we are tonight. You know, happy 2 years of the Trump administration. Right? This is how we're celebrating the 2-year jubilee in our country, with this week-long celebration of absolutely terrifying, neck-snapping news. We're also in day 28 of a government shutdown. There's apparently not going to be a State of the Union this year, and the administration, as of today, is officially dropping sanctions on companies associated with the Russian oligarch who was sanctioned for election interference. How is your family celebrating the anniversary? Because that's what we're doing as a country. As I mentioned, the editor-in-chief at BuzzFeed, Ben Smith, tonight has put out his own statement responding to the special counsel after the special counsel put out an incredibly rare statement disputing reporting from BuzzFeed today. We're joined now by Ben Smith, who is the editor-in-chief of BuzzFeed News. Ben, thank you very much for joining us tonight. I know it's short time. It's short notice.
Thanks for having me on, Rachel. Sorry I couldn't make it up there in person.
That's okay. Let me know, first of all, what's the status right now in terms of reporting this out in your shop and the response that you guys are trying to assemble in terms of what the special counsel's office has said tonight?
We're obviously continuing to chase this story as we have been for 2 years, right now trying to understand what the special counsel is actually saying in his statement, which is obviously disputing some element of our story, but it's very difficult to understand which one.
Have you had interaction with the special counsel's office about this specific story prior to getting the statement tonight from Peter Carr?
I personally haven't, but obviously the reporters on the story reached out to them before. They declined to comment, but did send over bits of Michael Cohen's testimony, and then 24 hours later released this. And we describe our sources here as federal law enforcement officials involved in the investigation of the matter of the Trump Tower Moscow, and we're not playing games with that characterization. These are strong sources close to the investigation, or involved in the investigation, who we spoke to after the publication of the story as well as before, and who told us it was accurate and stood by it.
So let me just clear, I'm just not actually sure I heard what you said. In terms of contact with the special counsel's office ahead of publication, your reporters contacted the special counsel's office and put the full story to them, or you said pieces of Michael Cohen's testimony to them?
Oh, I'm sorry, put a summary, so as you usually do, sort of said, we're preparing to report this. Do you have any comment? They declined to comment, but then did send over an element of Michael Cohen's, the publicly released, his sort of confession.
Mm-hmm. And you said that you've spoken with the sources for this story since publication and since the response tonight from the special counsel's office. Your sources
since publication.
Okay, and your sources are not backing off what they've told your reporters. And are you confident that these sources are in a position to know what they tell you they know?
Yes, we are.
Okay, Ben. Obviously, one of the black boxes here is the Justice Department structure around the special counsel's office, and there's been movement there. We've had Jeff Sessions be recused. We've had him leave. We've got an acting attorney general there now. There's different reporting about whether or not the acting attorney general, Matt Whitaker, or Rod Rosenstein is overseeing the investigation or dealing with important developments in the investigation on a day-to-day basis. Do you have any concern that this statement from the special counsel's office might be an effort to dissuade you and dissuade your reporters from pursuing this, even if it is accurate, just because it either interferes with the special counsel's investigation in some way, or it is otherwise too uncomfortable as territory for this Justice Department?
These are some of the best lawyers in America here, and this statement is obviously crafted by lawyers to mean something. It is not totally clear what it means, but. And I think we would like to know what it means. It's hard to speculate on the motive when you aren't really clear on what it means.
Mm-hmm. Do you have anything that you can tell us in terms of what we should expect for next steps? Obviously, if the story needs to be withdrawn or corrected, I'm assuming that you will do that. If you can add to your reporting in a way that pushes the special counsel on this dispute, I imagine that we will hear that from your reporters as well.
Yeah, and Anthony and Jason are continuing to obviously tonight report very, very hard on this. And again, one thing I think worth noting is that this is a specific line of the Russian investigation. This is the Trump Tower Moscow story, which these reporters were way, way out in front on, broke big elements of, that did sit out there for a while last year before they were at the heart of the Cohen indictment. Mm-hmm. So this isn't coming out of a blue sky, and this is a line of reporting that has been repeatedly vindicated.
Ben Smith, BuzzFeed's editor-in-chief, at a very kinetic moment in BuzzFeed right now. Ben, thank you very much for being with us. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Rachel.
All right, so this has been a rollicking day on this story. This bombshell pushback from the special counsel's office on BuzzFeed's bombshell reporting has created a bunch of questions. You heard me discuss some of them there with Ben in terms of those reporters standing by the story. When he says that these reporters absolutely pushed our understanding in terms of what the Trump Tower Moscow scandal is, it's true, they did the definitive reporting in terms of us understanding how big the Trump Tower Moscow project was, how long it went on for. It was BuzzFeed's reporting on that story that I think laid the groundwork for us to understand what anybody was talking about when Michael Cohen turned up in court in November to plead guilty to lying to Congress related to his previous testimony about Trump Tower Moscow. I mean, all of these things are moving parts, but these have proven to be well-sourced reporters who have been ahead of everybody else and whose previous reporting has been borne out later in court by things said by the special counsel. So there's reporting questions here. There's very interesting questions about why the special counsel's office is speaking up on this story when they almost speak on nothing. And there's legal questions, of course, about what this reporting would mean and what the apparent scare over this story means moving forward. We've got some expert help to tackle all of that coming up. Stay with us.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.